I came home from the hospital still shaking, the stitches along my belly tugging with every breath. 11 days behind white walls had emptied me out. 11 days of fevers, alarms, and the cold quiet of a room no one visited. Not my son, Gregory, not Michelle, his wife. When they discharged me, a nurse called a cab because there was no one waiting, no one to help me into a car, no one to ask if I was all right. I stepped into my house with a foolish little hope anyway. Maybe a note, a warm plate, something to say we worried. Instead, I stopped dead in the kitchen. There, planted beside my old fridge, stood a gleaming, stainless monument to arrogance, a second refrigerator. Gregory sauntered in from the living room, a beer hissing in his hand as if nothing were strange. Michelle trailed behind, armed with a stack of sticky labels and a thick black marker. She didn't even look up. "What is that?" I pointed. "Our fridge," Gregory said, swallowing. "For our things." Michelle crouched and began pasting labels on every shelf, every bin, every drawer. In big, thick letters, Shelley, Shelley, Shelley. "This keeps our groceries separate," she said lightly. "Why pay for our food with our money? No mix-ups." I stood there with the stitch, pain, and the kind of hurt that lives behind the ribs. "This is my house," I managed. Gregory chuckled, dry as sand. "Sure, Mom, but we live here too. And with your limited pension, you can't afford what we like. So, organization." Michelle closed the chrome door with a satisfied push. Inside were marbled steaks, imported cheeses, bottles that cost more than my winter coat. "No offense, Eleanor," she added sweetly. "We have standards. No offense." 2 words dipped in sugar to make the poison go down. Pages 4 to 6, I could have shouted that I spent 35 years on a factory floor to raise that boy, that I pawned my mother's jewelry so he could finish college. I could have listed the nights I worked overtime and the mornings I iced my back before sunrise. Instead, I carried my hospital bag down the hallway to the tiny room that used to be my sewing room. They'd moved in, for a little while, a year earlier. A little while turned into claiming my bedroom, then the living room, then the rest. Out of love, out of loneliness, I found ways to forgive each trespass until forgiveness turned to silence. That night laughter drifted down the hall, a cork popped. The new fridge door opened and shut. They were celebrating something. Maybe finally putting me in my place. On my narrow bed, the images looped: the shiny fridge, the fat labels, the proud tilt of Michelle's chin. The phrases ricocheted in my skull: "Your meager check, we deserve more," until the tears burned into something hotter. Rage, not the wild kind, the steady kind that sits beside you and won't leave. I thought back Gregory, my miracle baby after 3 losses. Bernard, my husband, gone suddenly at work 15 years ago. The promises Gregory made at the funeral: "You'll never want for anything, Mom." Promises that dissolved when he met Michelle. Her salon hair and perfect nails, a hurricane wrapped in perfume. 8 years of requests disguised as emergencies: the deposit, the repairs, the dental work, the courses, the phone. Dollar by dollar, my savings fell into a pit. Then the pandemic. They arrived with suitcases. Temporary, they said. Temporary swelled to permanent, and permanent became control. Michelle reorganized my kitchen, tossed the pots Bernard gave me on our first anniversary, then called the replacements. Not embarrassing. Pages 7 to 9, it was the labels on that second fridge that finally did it. Shelley branded on my shelves as if I were livestock. I stared at the ceiling until the sun leaked in and decided, with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, enough. Before dawn, I padded to the kitchen. My old fridge held a few eggs, a carton of milk, yesterday's bread. Their new one was packed with delicacies. I poured water and sat very still, making a plan. Confront them. What had I signed 6 months back when Gregory shoved a paper under my hand to update the will? Fear pinned my tongue. By 9, the car roared off. I cleaned because old habits are old chains. At the sink, I glimpsed my neighbor, Beverly, in her straw hat, watering petunias. 71, widowed, and somehow luminous. She caught my eye and waved. Then, to my surprise, she came over and knocked. She stepped into my kitchen, and her gaze went straight to the double fridges. Her mouth tightened at the labels. "Forgive me for being direct," she said after a breath, "but I hear things through these walls." Heat crawled up my neck. "Last night," Beverly continued softly, "I heard them toasting. Michelle said it won't be long now. When the old woman goes, the house is ours. 200 grand at least. Gregory answered, I hope she hurries. I'm tired of pretending. Something inside me didn't crack, it settled. The lie that my son still cherished me evaporated like morning mist. There's more, Beverly said. I've seen Gregory sneaking out of the bank with papers, and Michelle's been hauling in boxes, designer labels, stacks of them. I don't know where to start, I whispered. I do, Beverly said. Arthur Dawson, retired attorney. He helps with elder abuse cases. She called him on the spot. He'd come at 3. Pages 10-12. I turned my house into a crime scene, and began gathering proof. In the master bedroom, my bedroom, I found towers of luxury. Shoes in their satin bags, dresses still tagged, 4 watches lined up like medals. Receipts spilled out of drawers, restaurants, bars, a casino. In another drawer, credit card statements, 3 maxed, out cards in their names and a 4th in mine, my name, nearly at the limit. I had never applied for it. My hands shook. In a folder, a pending home equity application for $50 and odd against this house, my house. The signature looked like mine until it didn't. I hid the stack under my mattress and pulled the cookie tin from above the cabinet. Bank statements told the rest transfers I never made, ATM withdrawals in neighborhoods I've never visited, premium subscriptions I've never heard of. Added up, and nearly $20,000 had bled out over 6 months, all while Gregory helped me check the balances. At 3 sharp, Beverly returned with a tall man in a gray jacket and kind, tired eyes. Arthur, he said, shaking my hand. My mother went through something like this. We were too late. He sat with a legal pad while I laid out the proof. His jaw tightened. Identity fraud, forgery, financial elder abuse. We'll move fast. He outlined my options, confront and negotiate, unlikely to stick, sue civilly, slow but solid, or pursue criminal charges heavy and real. First, he added, tapping the home equity form, we stop this loan. Tomorrow morning, we go to the bank. We lock everything down. Pages 13-15. That evening, they came home with glossy shopping bags dangling from their wrists. I stood in the living room and said, calm as a metronome, we need to go to the bank together tomorrow. Gregory's eyes flashed, then went blank. I have an interview, he said too quickly. Then the next day, Michelle rolled her eyes and pulled a cork. You're confused, Eleanor. Gregory manages your finances because you can't. Exactly why I need to understand them myself. They drank their expensive wine. They didn't offer me a glass. In the morning, Beverly and Arthur drove me to the branch as the sun caught in the glass facade. The manager, Marcus, welcomed us into a small office. Arthur spoke in clean, sharp sentences. Marcus listened, then began to dig. An hour later, he turned the screen toward us. Ms. Hayes, there are irregularities across 2 years, unauthorized transfers, withdrawals, recurring charges you never approved, roughly $42,000. And this home equity loan, he added, will be frozen immediately. The signature is suspect. We spent another hour changing passwords, removing Gregory's access, closing fraudulent cards, and filing the bank's formal fraud reports. Marcus printed thick copies for evidence. If investigations confirm what we see here, he said, the bank will pursue recovery. You won't be liable for fraudulent charges. We stepped out into the daylight with a folder that felt heavier than a brick and lighter than the fog in my chest. Pages 16-18. Back home, Arthur began to photograph everything, the labeled fridge, the boxes, the receipts. Lifestyle evidence, he said. It shows where the money went. At 6, their car pulled in. Beverly sat beside me on the sofa. Arthur waited, composed. Gregory took one look at Arthur's briefcase and lost color. Michelle squared her shoulders. Sit, I said. Arthur introduced himself as my counsel. Documents slid onto the coffee table. Accounts opened in my name, transfers to Gregory's account, the home equity application with its shaky forgery. Beverly spoke, calm as a witness in church, repeating what she'd heard the night I came home. Michelle pivoted to tears. Gregory stammered excuses that folded in on themselves. Arthur laid out 2 paths. Option 1, admit the fraud in writing, repay every dollar with interest, and leave the house immediately. Or option 2, criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Michelle blanched. We don't have $42,000. Sell what you bought. Get jobs. Pay monthly, Arthur replied. You have until noon tomorrow to decide either way. You leave tonight. He handed over an immediate notice to vacate. Michelle called it illegal until Arthur explained, level as a spirit level, that they were unauthorized occupants. If necessary, he'd call the police. They packed. The house shook with drawers yanked and suitcases thumped. Michelle raided her labeled refrigerator, shoving cheeses and wine into bags like a raccoon at a picnic. Gregory, gray-faced, looked at me one last time. You'll regret this when you're alone. I already was. I said. They drove away with a car full of the life they stole from me. I sat hard on the couch and sobbed, not from loss but release. Beverly held me. You did the right thing. And I believed him. Pages 19-21. Now we wait. Arthur said after we'd cleaned the worst of the mess. If they choose option 1, we draft the agreement. If not, we file criminal charges at noon tomorrow. The bank will also proceed. Beverly wouldn't let me sleep alone that night. We ate something simple. We changed sheets in my room, and opened the windows to let the old air out. I lay down in my own bed and felt the house exhale with me. Morning brought eggs, toast, and the quiet dignity of a kitchen without labels. At 12:12 my phone rang. Mom, Gregory said, voice rasped and small. Just me. Michelle's not here. I'll take option 1. Arthur arrived in 15 minutes. We set the terms: acknowledgement of fraud, repayment of 42,000 plus interest, immediate minimum monthly payments increasing with employment, and a clause that a single missed payment triggers criminal filings. Gregory signed with a shaking hand. Michelle, I asked. The bank will pursue her separately. Arthur said. So will we. Gregory lingered at the door. I don't know. I told the man who used to be my boy. Pages 22-24. 3 months passed. Each month, a transfer arrived, then 300, with no note. Michelle vanished. The bank reclaimed 18 Zalos and deposited it back into my account. I fixed a leaking roof, a stubborn bathroom pipe, the garage door. I sold the second fridge and planted roses, lavender, and a row of sunflowers that craned toward the afternoon light. The house began to look like mine again, cream walls instead of grubby gray, curtains with little flowers. A bowl of bright fruit on the table. My old fridge, alone and humming, held the things I liked: crisp apples, good butter, a small slice of pie on Sundays. Arthur filed protections I didn't know existed. Your will is locked, he explained. No one changes it without you present and medically cleared as competent. The deed is secured. Your accounts have alerts. Beverly became more than a neighbor. We sipped tea. We walked in the park and argued kindly about books. And one afternoon she looked at me and said, You have your smile back. She was right. I had thought my smile was gone forever. It had only been buried. Pages 25-27. 4 months after the eviction, a compact car pulled up to the curb. A young woman stepped out, a little boy holding her fingers. Ms. Hayes. I'm Nomi, she said, nerves in her voice. Gregory's girlfriend. This is Bernard. The child studied me with enormous eyes. Are you my grandma? My throat tightened. Yes, baby, I am. Naomi didn't ask me for forgiveness. She told me Gregory had found therapy and work, that he was paying, that he was trying to be a better man for his son. They stayed only a few minutes, but the visit left a soft ache that lingered for days. Could I forgive? I didn't know. There was a boy now. A boy who had done nothing wrong, carrying my husband's name. Pages 28-30. On my 69th birthday, a letter arrived in Gregory's handwriting. He didn't beg. He didn't justify. He wrote about meetings with a counselor, about learning where shame ends and responsibility begins, about carrying boxes on a second job, about his son's laugh. He ended with, I don't deserve forgiveness. I am not asking for it. I'm just trying every day to be the man you raised before I lost my way. I love you. I tucked the letter into a drawer. I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. A month later, Beverly threw me a little party. Neighbors came with casseroles and stories. My house sounded like a home again, mugs clinking, someone laughing too loud, a song from the radio in the background. I looked around and understood Michelle had lied. I wasn't destined to be alone. I was surrounded by people who chose me. That night, under the calm of a moonlit window, I texted Gregory, I received your letter. I'm not ready to see you yet, but when we do, I want to meet Bernard properly, no lies, no manipulation. Just truth. Think about it. His reply came quickly. Whenever you're ready. No pressure. I love you. I set the phone down and watched the garden sway. The sunflowers nodded like old friends. The roses needed deadheading. Tomorrow, I told myself, tomorrow I'll prune and call the roofer and bake the lemon cake Beverly likes and take a walk where the path dips into shade. Because the truest thing I learned in all of this is simple. Family isn't the blood that bruises you, it's the hands that steady you. Love is not a ledger. And sometimes the bravest word a woman can say is enough. I went to sleep wearing a small, stubborn smile. Not because the past was fixed, it never would be, but because the future finally had room for me. I had come home, not just to a quiet kitchen and a single humming fridge, but back to myself, and that, after everything, was the greatest victory of all.